Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hillifredy. I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, we continue to travel through all of the gates before we get to the realm of death, which means that we are finishing up our prompt from Diploraptor over on Discord. This is the second part, so you definitely want to go ahead and listen to the first part before we continue on. And remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, and submit the prompt on the radial button. If you want to send us an email the old-fashioned way, you can always send it to worldbuildwithus@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media on Twitter over at Let's Worldbuild. You can join our community over on Discord with a link for that in the description. And if you're feeling particularly generous, you can always give us money over on Patreon with a link for that in the description as well. So without further ado, we're going to ride right into the second part. Now, where we left off, we had a twist, which was Big Brother is watching. So who wants to reconcile the twist that we have going on? Daniel, start us off.
Okay, so for the twist, I wasn't thinking of anything really earth-shattering or huge, which is the point of the twist, I understand. But my thoughts were there's probably, Big Brother's watching means spying of some kind or like oversight. So I thought either there's one of the factions that's opposed to both the Ferryman and the Empire has some knowledge or some spies within their group. So maybe one of the Majocracy factions that we were talking about. And so they have some intelligence, or maybe there is something inside the planes that's watching what's going on. And so there's a larger perspective above all of them. And that thing has its own intentions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Interesting. I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what you had there. And I was thinking, when I think of Big Brother, right, I, of course, think of the CBS reality show. But more importantly, I also do think of the 1984 book. And with that, I tend to think of Big Brother as like a means of control. It's not just about spying to me. It's also a means of like there is a plan and there is an edifice within play that is controlling things. So that got me thinking about the pilgrims, or rather the refugees themselves, the ferrymen. So I'm starting to think that the ferrymen themselves, that this whole, them leading these people out and, they're kind of spreading out in course of directions and whatnot, that this is deliberate in some way. And I'm not going to say that I originally had it as the Empire, while seemingly falling apart, is actually behind this kind of manipulation where, they're deciding, or they're pushing these refugees into certain areas to set the seeds to reconquer these lands. But I'm not convinced about that yet. And my general take on it is that there is someone who's pulling the strings. There's someone who is directing these refugees in certain areas that they need to be to essentially spring a trap, right? So this is all some kind of a conspiratorial kind of plan by someone, and I'm hoping that Courtney can come in and tell us who it is, or at some point, that is deliberate. Like this whole plan has been hatched, and it's gone perfectly. It's part of the plan, like it's like Q followers, like got to trust the plan. That's basically where we are with this.
So mine ties in definitely with Daniel's, and I think we could make it work with yours, Rob. My idea was that the keys are not just gates between worlds, but they're also a way for like whatever the prime beings in charge of each plane, a way for them to observe and manipulate the material world. Kind of like how in Lord of the Rings, like putting the One Ring on lets Sauron like see you and track you down. So thinking something similar with the keys here. So maybe it's even like whatever is in control of the realm of the dead is the one responsible for this exodus.
I'm fully supporting this idea. I love the idea that the god of the dead or the lord of the realm of the dead has like manipulated everything to this point, right? Where something is happening and his disciples are now spreading out across the land yet again. And something's happening. We don't know what yet, but I love that idea. I love that that's a solid concept.
Could the realm of the dead be something other than we think it is? Like, that is this being that's there. Maybe they're not like a god, but they're like a former ruler of an empire. And the realm of the dead is like what could happen to the current one that's disintegrating.
Oh, I see what you mean.
I don't know how that would work metaphysically, but what I'm interested in here is like, instead of us making this big bad like some abstraction, like what if it has some connection to the history of everything else?
Like an old king or old emperor who somehow usurped the god of the dead, like took over power somehow there.
Yeah, or kind of like when we were talking offline, Rob, you're talking about, if you'll remind me of the exact terminology, this kind of the cyclical nature of history. Maybe there's the realms of these paranormal realms are actually former realities that have become this way because of things that happened before.
Okay. I'm loving this idea a lot because I think that we can go a little bit further and go like we can introduce the concept of cyclical time, and we can also introduce the idea, like kind of go with the more conspiratorial concept as well. Here's what I'm thinking. When I say that this was all kind of deliberate and part of the plan, maybe the impetus for this whole thing was the original emperor of the empire died and then actually took over the land of the dead as a result. And then he's been beckoning to that empire ever since. And his machinations are what has finally led to, he's basically trying to come back and rule the empire from the land of the dead in some way.
Yeah, I like that because it's nice and simple, right?
Yes.
It could be cloaked in the mystery of this being a god or some benevolent and malicious force, but at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to: someone who wants to come home.
Yes,
and rule again.
Exactly. And it's simple, but it's also like there's a lot that's kind of at play in a lot of ways as well, because I mean, a zombified or dead version of, like a previous reigning emperor is like, oh, well, that's just kind of like conservatism in a lot of ways, like if we wanted to take it into a political realm, we don't have to, but that's kind of like the concept that I have, where it's like a concept that is dead and buried is now trying to come back and rule once more, like if we wanted to be real blunt about it.
I like that. That means that the histories of this lore, if you were to, develop this as game setting or story or whatever, like, is very important because you can leave those clues as the story develops so that when someone realizes what the big bad really is, it means something to the story.
Yeah. And so I suppose my question is like, right, my basic concept with this whole thing is it's all his machinations, right? So I suppose the question that I want answered now is, are the ferrymen part of that or not? Because I was leaning towards that they are, but now that we have this kind of, exiled king, or exiled because he was dead, right? Like the first emperor. So, all right, let's go with that term then, I suppose. So this first emperor, right? He wants to return home and he wants to rule all of these realms in between and try and come back in some way, right?
Yeah.
So are the ferrymen part of his plans or not? Or are they genuine rebels?
I feel like they're genuine rebels, but maybe he's done something or is using them in some way that they don't know about. Maybe it's something to how last time we were talking about how they're unknowingly spreading certain types of magic. Maybe that's part of his influence. Like he knows that they're going to do that, and that in turn makes it easier for him to get a grasp on the material world if he has these like little areas that he can kind of reach into or cross over through.
really like that concept. I think that there might be something to it as well, where it's like once all of these like fonts of energy or power have been introduced onto the material plane, then maybe that like opens the gate for his return, you know, like once the however many gates have been opened or at least kind of opened on the material plane, maybe that's when he's like, okay, I can now come back, you know, like maybe that's what we're trying to prevent in some way.
Yeah.
And then let's not forget that when the ferrymen get to the realm of the dead, they have to retrieve the person and bring them back through the gates. Like maybe it's not as easy as they thought it was, and he had some part in helping that happen.
Interesting. Well, why wouldn't he send himself first then, I suppose, is the question we'd answer.
There must be some reason why he can't. Maybe he's bound in some way, and that's part of the whole process of like manipulating all this.
Maybe he wants to rule, and since he's gained the crown down in the land of the dead, it's something that like he wants to rule both, but he can't be living and dead at the same time. So he's like, whatever, I'm just going to be an undead king, you know, that type of thing.
This could work with what you're saying. We could do a Final Fantasy VIII sort of thing. In order for him to rule again, he has to invert the state of the kingdom of the dead. So his end goal is to make the kingdom of the dead replace the existing kingdom, and all of the realms that have been turned into planes of whatever element they are would replace the existing realms that are out in the world that the keys are being sent to. So he's kind of flipping it, which would then imprison those in the same like pancake. You see what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah. So we're essentially trying to reverse the planes of existence. Is that what you're saying, Daniel?
Yeah, like maybe the reason, I don't know why he can't just walk out, but maybe for whatever reason, like you're saying, he can't walk out. His goal is, I want to not only escape, but I need to restore my kingdom too. So I'm going to replace the living kingdom with this one and replace all the other ones with the keys with the old kingdoms who were my neighbors, my old land. The whole thing will be inverted. And then the ones who brought the keys back out, they end up taking the place in the other planes. Like their lands.
So with that concept in mind, right, would this mean that the other planes get inverted that are in between the prime material plane and the land of the dead? Would they get inverted as well? So
yes, so that's like so you got 5 keys, right? 5 lands in the living replace the 5 lands in the realms all the way to the realm of the dead.
Right. If you'll notice, that was also a masterclass segue into our next bit, because I feel like we've really gotten the twist down. We've got this new big bad. We've got all these concepts coming together. And now we get to introduce the planes of realities that are in between. And then I suppose what we can also do is see what they're inverted and how they're inverted as well.
Ooh.
Yes, ooh, indeed. So, Courtney, why don't you go ahead and start us off by telling us about your plane of existence and the faction that goes along with it?
Sure. So mine was going to be the plane of monsters.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to go in a different direction other than like elemental or like good versus evil kind of thing. So I'm picturing this as a birthplace of mythical creatures like dragons, griffins, hydras, and so on. The one ruling over it, I imagine, would be the mother of all monsters. I'm not entirely sure what she would look like, but maybe she even changes appearance depending on what she's about to give birth to. And just a
giant ovary or a giant vulva, I guess.
just pooping out monsters.
Yeah, it's not quite what I had in mind, but we can go with that.
One of my favorite deities from Pathfinder is Lamashtu, who is the mother of monsters. And if I'm not mistaken, the way that she's originally depicted is like kind of like a jackal-headed woman who has scars all over her stomach from where her children literally scratched and bit their way out of.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at that now. Damn.
Yeah,
that's pretty brutal.
Yeah, no, Lamashtu's pretty dope. And from what I'm remembering, she was also the mother of gnolls. So it's also like this, all sorts of weird, fucked up, cool mythology. Go check out Lamashtu. Actually, go check out most of the gods and goddesses from the Galarian setting because they're one of my favorite like fantasy standards that I've seen around.
Yeah, she looks very cool and disturbing.
Yeah, and horrifying. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But
which I think is appropriate for being the mother of monsters.
I kind of agree. Yeah. I'm always disappointed when you see the mother of monsters and it's just like literally a human woman. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Like, that's the best that you got? Okay.
I was definitely picturing something more that has like parts of different monsters either embedded in her or, like I said, if she shifts shape over time. But yeah, definitely not just a plain old lady.
Interesting. So what is your faction then?
So mine is based on the magic that I thought would be associated with the plane of monsters. And I'm thinking along the lines of summoning and being able to communicate with and control animals.
Interesting.
So I could see some sort of like primal druidic summoning type group who actively tries to like draw monsters from the plane of monsters and almost worships them as demigods or minor deities, and probably attempts to like use them in some way or attempts to control them, which doesn't always work out in their favor. Because if they're pulling like a literal dragon from this plane, maybe they'd be able to control it for a small amount of time, but eventually it would probably overpower them and get away and start wreaking havoc across the world.
Can I make a gross suggestion?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Oh, God.
I love this idea.
I wonder if you're going where I just thought you might be going.
Oh, well, we're gonna find out. I had a great, because remember that the magic that we're talking about here, it is infused and awakened in people, places, and things. And for me, I was thinking places would be really great and really interesting. So I'm imagining a birthing cave, which is a previously regular ass cave. Yeah, exactly. A previously regular cave that is now like wet and slick with ichor. And it's like, you don't know how or why, but suddenly there are monsters literally crawling out of this thing. And I could see it as kind of a, like you set it and forget it for your enemies type thing. So you find an area within an enemy territory, you awaken this cave, and then suddenly their direct territory is now infested with monsters because you found and summoned this cave to existence.
Oh, interesting. That's pretty cool.
Gross. You got it in the gross for the monsters. Yeah.
I'm picturing like very fleshy and like wet, like you said, lots of moisture in there.
Yes. Yeah. So in terms of horror movies, you have the old, prosthetics and stuff like that. And there is a subcategory of puppets within the prosthetics that are just the wettest puppets available. Shout outs to Scaredy Cats. But it's like, yeah, you want the wettest puppets, aka the wettest monsters that are like just covered in slime, like head
or
to
like
toe.
an Alien where they use like gallons upon gallons of like goop.
Yes.
Poured all over the place,
absolutely. Yeah.
My question for you, Courtney, is the opposite of my usual question of how do we make it physical? It's how do we make it metaphorical? So like, what do the monsters represent culturally or, I don't know, psychically to these peoples? Like, are they are scary inner selves? Are they like, are possibilities? Like, what do they mean metaphorically?
I would say like primal fear of the unknown, which I think could also work well with Rob's like monster nest cave idea, where
It's
you
the
open
birthing
that,
cave,
but
Courtney. It's
the birthing cave, the gross birthing cave, where you open that portal essentially between worlds, but you don't know what's going to come out of it. Like you have no way of predicting. Yeah, so it's curiosity, but yeah, sort of opening Pandora's box in a way. Like you don't know what's gonna burst out of there and wreck everything.
That's cool.
So instead of this being like a plane of monsters, can we just call it, this is the plane of unknown fear or something like that? Because the reason I'm bringing this up this way is because if we're inverting these planes, if you go from the plane of monsters to the plane of like regular ass like humans or like regular ass animals, like
it's adorable woodland creatures now.
Yeah, right. Like I think that's less interesting what
Yeah.
the inverse could be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about that? Like I could be completely off base. If you want to keep it as monsters, that's fine. But like what are we thinking about the inversion for that as well?
No, I do like the idea of like a plane of fear, or the
Mhm.
fear of the unknown. So inverting that could be, I mean, you'd sort of know everything that's there,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time that would get rid of the sense of wonderment from it.
Mm-hmm.
There would no longer be any awe to it.
The question of the inversion is like, okay, if this is the plane of fear where monsters in the unknown live, is the power manifesting in the people the opposite of that? Like, is that what we mean?
Well, that's the concept, right? Because if we're in the
Uh-huh.
land of the living or the prime material plane, and then the goal of the land of the dead is to invert everything. My
Oh,
guess
okay.
is that the planes in between are going to invert in some way as well. So
Mhm.
to me, like, okay, if we're thinking of inversions, what's the inversion of fear? And is the
Oh,
inversion of
courage
fear,
then. Yeah.
Yeah,
is it
courage
courage
or
or is it
hope.
knowledge? Right? Because
Yeah, yeah.
specifically,
Could be
we could
knowledge.
go either way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that, so then you could express that if the power that comes from commanding the plane of fear is that, you know, you have a sure knowledge of things, you know, those might be like mages who are very research based. It could be courageous barbarians, depending on how you want to spin it. But I imagine too, lore wise, that means that that realm of fear used to be a kingdom that either had a lot of knowledge or a lot of strength, like from a
Yeah.
Roman sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what you're really tapping into in the
Yeah,
inversion.
I could see that as like even a almost real way of doing it, if that makes sense. Like if the kingdom had previously done enormous amounts of research and had maybe even started to experiment on animals and create their own, like maybe that's how it eventually became this plane of like primal, unknown, terrifying monsters, because that's sort of the dregs of what was left over from their research initially.
I like the idea that what we're doing by introducing these planes is we're no longer, because once Daniel came up with that concept of the inversion,
Mm-hmm.
our planes that we're introducing are now pulling double duty.
Yeah.
Because now we get two
Yeah.
planes for the price of one, because now we're inverting each of them and we're inventing that plane at the same time. So
The
it's like,
value deal
cool,
for
you've
planes.
come.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this is like so easy to do. And now we have 8 realms, and then there's probably a middle one which is neutral to inversion in some way. But I think that
Mhm.
that is interesting and really cool in and of itself. You know, like I think that completely spontaneously we have now doubled our output, which is really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And I so I would like, can we in fact double dip with this whole inversion of Courtney's concept and make it both a realm of courage and knowledge? So we can have like barbarian librarians of some kind.
Yes.
You know, like,
Oh,
or
maybe
just,
they're like studious, but they also express that culturally through like, you know, mastering your body and the way the knowledge of your body too. Like they
Yeah.
express that as like if you're really athletic, you study, but athleticism is also an expression of that I don't know,
Yeah.
control.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course we can get the Dune reference, which is fear is the mind killer, right?
Yeah.
So we can go full Dune with it and have all that good stuff. Courtney, my question to you is, can you give me a glimpse into this plane of monsters? Give me like a cool geographic location or some kind of like description, even if just like a really tiny sliver of it. Like, do you have in mind what it might look like?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's very, I think, dark, stormy. There's a lot of like turbulence in the weather. I imagine that the geographical features too are all very like large and maybe like visually dominant. Like you would enter the world and almost be overcome with how much and how vast there is of everything, and how tall the mountains are, how deep the valleys are, how enormous the oceans are, because of course they have to be home to all of these gigantic like leviathans and mythical
Yeah.
creatures. So everything is
Immense
just
is the word
really
you're looking for.
just
Yeah.
oversized. And like, if you as a person would enter that realm, you would just feel like this microscopic little ant in
Mhm.
this land.
Can we fuck with it a little bit more, and can we have it so the geography is changing as well, so it's like
Yeah.
you can't really map anything out. It's a matter
Mhm.
of, oh well, this is what we got, you know.
Ooh, you could almost bring like quantum elements into it, where you look away from something and you look back and it's just completely changed all of a sudden.
Oh
Like,
yeah, you're
as
like
soon as you observe
walking.
something and look away, it's gonna change. Like, there's no way you can actually keep track of anything.
I love that. And I love the visual of you're walking, like you're trying to ford a river, and then you turn around and somehow there's just like this immense, vast forest,
Hmm.
this immense forest before you. And suddenly there's dozens of glowing eyes looking at you, like something like
Yeah.
that, where it's like you are just gripped with fear constantly, right?
Hmm.
Because there's always something that there's like there's teeth that are like at your neck
Hmm.
constantly. There's something that you just can't overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good expression of the concept.
Hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Courtney. Yeah. Daniel, why don't you go ahead and hit us with your plane of existence? What concept did you decide to run with here?
What's funny is that I think I'm on the same plane as Courtney in the sense of going after like a feeling. So I was thinking about a plane of desire,
Mm.
or a plane of
Ooh,
passion,
okay.
Hmm.
That's cool.
volcanism and creation. So
Nice.
like I'm thinking it's funny because now we're talking about the inversion of it. I have an idea of how that might work, but I imagine in this plane, you know, your traditional fire plane, but with overtones of like Hephaestus kind of like, you know, like the dwarven forge sort of deal where they're constantly making things, and it's the plane of metal and the plane of like creation basically.
Mm, I see. I see.
Hmm.
So is
Mountains.
that so we're not getting lust, this is more of creativity? Is I'm trying to
Sure, why not? Yeah, I would say maybe because the passion, I think, would be one of them too.
passion, okay.
Like the
Hmm.
fire of passion, and from that comes creation and industry and
Mhm, mhm.
labor.
Interesting, okay. It's so funny that you should mention that, because I have to cut in and mention my plane, because I'm not sure if we have inverted planes or not, Daniel.
Oh, okay.
Because I wanted to do the wilds, and
Oh,
Hmm.
it is a plane of vast forests and wildlife, but freedom and chaos in a lot of ways as well. My faction, I want to get this in here as well. My faction was they just ran around and introduced werewolves into the setting, because again, I love werewolves and what represents the the overwhelming wildness of man being overtaken, or rather there's the civilized nature of man being overtaken by the wolven savagery, and that's what I wanted to get at. Are we opposites here, Daniel? Are our planes inversions of one another?
I think we can make that work because when I pictured passion, I don't picture like an uncontrolled, chaotic like
Hmm.
desire. Even that's I can think of something focused. So, like for example, someone's like lifelong passion or goal, which is like very obsessive. So instead of being like all over the place, you're focused on one thing. Or so to be like a Vulcan god of fire or a creator, you're
Mm,
building something in particular rather than
Hmm.
it being you know
yeah.
destructive or
Hmm.
chaotic. So sure.
I'm because I was thinking about my inversion as well, and because my plane is essentially just a vast forest or a vast, like wildlife preserve. I was thinking the opposite of that would be nothing but city streets. Like there is not a tree
Oh,
amongst the
rigidity. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
complete, and not only that, but it's a planned city, not like
Hmm.
European or like Boston, for example. Where it's like it's all grid patterns and it's all very specific, where it's very axiomatic. I didn't want to go straight law chaos, but I think that
Hmm.
this idea that you have here, civilization and passion, is kind of the inversion of what I was thinking, Daniel. But
yeah,
I don't know.
It's almost like harnessing the potential for something versus letting it grow wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting through line there, Courtney. Absolutely. Like you take the concept of potential, and then you have untapped potential, which I imagine would be the wilds, and then you have your honed potential, your passion, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing as well. I like that kind of concept that we can play with too.
Yeah.
So what was your faction, Danny? I cut you off there. I apologize. What faction did you want to involve here with our kind of dueling planes that we have?
Well, now that I've heard of the wilds and how those link together, I'm not so sure I want it to be what I imagined, but we can workshop it. But I had thought originally of some kind of, pseudo Mesoamerican culture of like sacrificing people and burning them alive to achieve some sort of power out of that. So I don't know how we might alter that, given that they're probably far more, they're probably not as connected to the wilds as your realm would be, since it's the inversion of it.
Why do we have to get rid of any of that? I see. Well, why don't we go ahead and take it a step further? Maybe this faction is finding the monsters and the wild things that are hiding within these crevices, and they're burning them. They're trying to literally burn out the chaos that's lying within,
That's what I pictured. And then before we had figured out that the powers manifest as the opposite, I thought it would be like having a bunch of pyrokineticists who can control, if it meant the literal, like control like the fire inside of others, or maybe that could be mind control or charm or something. But since it's the opposite of passion and fire, maybe it would be, I don't know, like cold-esque abilities, or abilities that are meant to like paralyze or
the manifestation still works. I mean, the inversion of mine is just like you create werewolves. Like I want to keep it simple, but your fire ability doesn't, like fight with what we're going here.
Okay.
What we're going.
Okay. Yeah. I would like that. I think that makes more sense. Yeah.
Not only that, but now you have this faction of, like witch finders who bring their own pyre with them. Like like, don't worry, we don't have to gather the townsfolk. I can just light them ablaze with a fine touch, like that kind of thing.
Like I'm picturing like Melisandre, when they take someone and she looks into the fire, but in this case, like they take someone and she looks into that person and they catch on fire,
Right.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
I like that concept as well. Like where you look into someone and you can see how wild or how passionate they are. Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
And also you'd have like these eyes of knowing, like by looking at someone, you can know what they really want. And so that's where the charm and the manipulation might come from.
That's interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Again, my faction, very simple. Like they make werewolves. They are basically recidivists where they want people to go and like shed. Actually, it's literally, and I hate to do this to myself, it is literally reject modernity, return to monkey. Like that's basically what this faction is. They're like, why? Like, we don't need this. Go and eat meat with your raw hands and your raw teeth. Like, you don't need any of this. It's all coddling you. Like, that's kind of the concept that I wanted to run with.
And it makes me wonder, because I'm thinking about the three of the things we've come up with. They seem to be in some way aspects of a single thing. And it makes me wonder if maybe this inversion isn't the inversion of individual lands, but the inversion of a single land that's been shattered into bits.
Yes.
So
Daniel.
Love it.
Yeah.
Maybe this emperor achieved like a total totalitarianism, and he conquered the entire continent, and then all this happened. Then he's been shattered in the afterworld, and he's trying to achieve the same thing in the new world.
Maybe the keys themselves are also, they were once a unified piece that was literally shattered apart.
Yeah.
So this world that we're talking about is literally a singular world that has been broken apart. And then the king is trying to reunite everything. Maybe he's not even a villain. Maybe this is him trying to make good on the thing that he fucked up like
Mhm.
thousands of years ago in the past. Maybe this is all not, maybe the ferrymen are unwittingly not the good guys in this situation.
Right.
Because
He might
they're,
see them as his children.
yeah, no, they're trying to stop, the reunification of this plane of existence. Absolutely.
I could also see though that like over time the reunification becomes less of a good thing, given how like the
Oh, yeah.
planes have become warped. Like we've got the giant like kaiju over on my plane of the
Yeah.
unknown
Yeah,
fear,
yeah.
and so I could see like maybe in the past bringing them back together would have worked, but at this point it's like so far
Yep.
gone that mashing them all together might just create this horrendous like chaos world.
So
Oh, I bet
that's
it will.
really fucking cool. And it also reminds me of the Shards of Alara, which is a Magic the Gathering set where, so Magic is broken into 5 colors. And in Shards of Alara, there was once the world as it was known, which is Alara. And it was broken apart. So each plane only had 3 colors of magic. And then what ended up happening is at the end of all of this, they all came back together. And boy, did things go wrong because, like there was the white plane, which wasn't used to chaos or death. And then all of a sudden you have like these monsters coming back and, like they were expecting like, oh, well, we're gathering our gear to go fight in an army. And they've only fought, like honorable duels for the last hundreds and hundreds of years. And then all of a sudden they're gathering their stuff together and goblins are attacking them as they're putting their war gear on. They're like, wait a minute, what is this? Like they're completely unprepared for the chaos and the death that is to come. And then obviously that's the inverse on all the other planes. Like everything that they had been missing is now coming in. It's like, oh fuck, what is this? This is not what we expected. I love Alara. It's one of my favorite sets. Not my favorite though. Not my favorite.
It does feel very much MTG, kind of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, not in a bad way. I think Magic has some of the best world building, even if it has some of the worst writing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, all those the part of the joy of playing Magic with Fremis for me was looking at the cards and looking at the art and the specifically the little one sentence suggestion of lore. And I'm like, oh, it's so much from that. Yeah,
the flavor text is like, yeah, I agree. I read all of the cards just for the flavor text sometimes. Like
yeah.
And I'm right there with you. Also, if you want to talk about fucking art game, Magic, hands down, is one of the best sources for
absolutely
art, fantasy art of any kind. It's so fucking good. I absolutely love it. So we've got our world of Alara light here, right? And I love the concept that this king is trying to fit everything back together. We've got our world of Alara, or fake Alara, and we've got this kingdom and or this empire, I suppose. So where do we want to go from here? I mean, we've basically created the main quest line, and I think it's one of those things where you can choose whether or not the reunification of the world is a good thing or a bad thing. And you can make that decision. And those are the branching storylines that you see before you.
Yeah. Yeah, we did the main quest, but do we have side questy things too?
You're right, Courtney. We do. Okay. So main quest, done and dusted, super easy. But you're right, Courtney. We do have side quests that we need to fulfill. And man, that's going to be real different. So let me pull that up. We're going to roll some dice and chaos will reign. So for these weird side quests, we often change up the genre. We're going to reimagine this world and try and see what it would look like in another time, place, and die roll, essentially. So the first thing that we need to figure out is the new genre is going to be a space western. Okay.
What?
And let's see, the theme that we're going to be doing within this space western is going to be creation. And the first thing that we're focusing on here is going to be a villain. So we've got a space western focused on creation, and it is focusing on a villain. So I don't think that this is actually as difficult as we are considering it to be. Space Western, I feel like we can, instead of planes of existence, we can just use planets.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's done and dusted pretty simply out the gate, right? The thing that I'm also thinking is that this is now going to rely on some kind of a celestial convergence to force all these planets into one again, is my guess. But again,
do asteroids, because space westerns and asteroids always work well together. And then the asteroids could be pieces of a planet.
Okay, I see what you're talking about. Yeah,
yeah, that works.
Yeah.
And you could put it in an asteroid belt, cowboys, horses. We're good.
Nice. Wow. Very
Daniel,
nice.
this is oh my. So we've got this. So let's talk about the villain then. Who is the villain and what is his goal? Again, our theme is creation. So he's trying to create something, is my guess, right?
Space Corporation.
Yeah. Or like space mafia, space crime boss.
Ooh, space crime boss.
Okay.
What's he trying to make? Why does he need to make
that's
a
kind
planet
of my
back?
question.
Yeah. Why does he want to put the asteroids back together? I wish it was space pirates, because that would be so much more fun.
Space pirates. Yeah.
Let's see. Do I have space pirates as a subgenre? I do not.
Can we add it?
Well,
Oh
yeah, that needs to go on there.
I mean, you know what? For all intents and purposes, let's say fuck it. Why is space pirates better here, Daniel?
Well, I was thinking like Treasure Planet. Isn't that the one that's like space pirates? That was fun.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly.
It didn't involve like some kind of map to some planet thing. But I guess that's the Treasure Planet.
Yeah.
That would make sense, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Isn't
space
that
pirates
also
because.
Titan AE?
Oh yeah, maybe I'm thinking of Titan A. Well, because I'm thinking like usually in a pirate thing, you usually have this big bad old pirate who's evil, who wants to achieve something. Usually he just wants gold, but he's trying to recover something. So I always feel like that would work, but I feel like we could still work with the Western in the same way, because there is usually a parallel for that pirate somehow.
And in Westerns, typically the villain is like the mayor or, you know, like the corporation, you know, well, not necessarily the law, because, you know, the law can often be the good person. It's often like, yeah, exactly. It's often like the evil ass corporation who is trying to inflict its will onto the town or the region.
The corrupt order is what you mean. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So I think corporation would fulfill that role. That's the easy way out, but I'm not opposed to that, but we should do a twist on it.
I agree. I think corporations, considering that they're people and also really good for everyone involved, they get a hard rap. So let's try and stay away from the corporations for this time. Maybe we can make it something else. Maybe we can figure out something else here.
So, I mean, thinking about Westerns, of course, there's the classic like railroad robbery, train robbery type trope. I wonder if we can pull that in somehow.
Okay.
If there's like a ridiculous like monorail type thing that goes through the asteroid belt.
Yes.
Right. Courtney.
Yes.
I think I have it.
Yes.
This villain is waiting for the celestial convergence where all the asteroids line up so it can run a space train and steal all of these asteroids one after another.
Yes.
And force them back into a planet.
Hell yes.
Yes.
And I'm
That's
guessing,
so ridiculous. It has to
yeah,
be.
Absolutely. And I'm guessing that they're doing this because they're going to sell it?
The planet. No, because there's something about all the pieces are valuable, but when they're put together, they make something super valuable that they can then steal.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's pieces. Maybe it was a moving planet and it's some kind of weapon or it's some kind of like device.
Or if we want to bring in the space pirates, maybe it is the key or the atlas or basically the place that's going to tell you where the treasure is. It's not the treasure. It's not the treasure itself, but it's the thing that's going to show you where the next. It's a treasure map. Oh my god!
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Okay.
And if you want to tie it to the Western, it's finding the gold mine. When you put it back together again, it's actually a machine that opens a wormhole to the treasure.
Okay. So it's also like, this is there's gold here and this person knows it, but then that person dies, but he left his map. It's yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That totally works. It doesn't make sense. It does kind of, but it totally works. Okay. And then of course, the quest here is wait. What is the quest here? Are you trying to stop them from putting the asteroids together, or is it like a race against time to put these things together?
I'm picturing it as like a race against the villains to get the treasure.
Gotcha.
But can we also be the villains?
So instead of yes, of course.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
But wait a minute. So I'm kind of rethinking this concept. Maybe when the asteroids come together in this celestial convergence, that's what shows you the way. So you don't need to like steal the asteroids themselves, but you use them as a guide to go from asteroid to asteroid to asteroid, and then it shows you where you need to go. That kind of thing.
Oh, so you gotta like get on the train, get in there, steal the bit, go to the next one, steal the bit.
Yes. Yeah. And maybe that's what the keys are for. Maybe it's a key to, maybe the keys in this case are literally pieces of a treasure map or pieces of something that you need to reconstruct. It tells you where the super valuable item is, that kind of thing.
And here's the wrinkle. Yeah. By getting all those keys, those little bits together and turning on the device, since the asteroids are still where they were, what that'll do is create a black hole type situation that will suck all the asteroids in and destroy all the people living on them.
I was going to say that seems really bad. That seems like something we don't want to do.
Really bad.
So that's why we can't. That's why the treasure's got to remain in its hole.
Gotcha. Okay. Sure. I'm going to call it. I feel like that's pretty fucking good where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that'll do it for this episode, Worldbuild with us. A big thank you to Diploraptor again for this prompt. And remember that if you want us to talk about your world, like we did with Diploraptor, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, click on the radio button and submit your prompt to us. And eventually we will build it and you will come. But not in that way, Courtney.
Whoa. No, I was totally thinking that. You're fair.
I know. I'm trying to cut you off at the pass here. Anyway, this has been an episode of Worldbuild with us. Thank you so much for listening. Remember that. Go to our website, follow us on the social media, all that stuff I said in the beginning, especially the Patreon stuff. If you like what we're doing here, we love hearing feedback from you in the Discord. More importantly than Patreon is Discord, kind of. But go there, do all that stuff. Remember that we love you very much, and we're going to get through this together. Until next week.